Okay, yay, chapter 1. Tov. So our Sefer, right? Sefer Shel Beinonim, we said already by the second printing, it was very clear that the non-official official name of the Sefer is Tanya. And the Tanya gets its name from the first word of the Sefer, which is Tanya. What does Tanya mean? So there are other deep meanings for Tanya, like we saw the other day. Itan is Otiot Tanya. Remember one of the ends of the last Kuntres Achron, one of the last ones. Hi, Lauren. Dun, Tanya, Lauren. Tanya. So the word, bless you. The word Tanya is here. I'm going to just read a few more words, and then you'll see the word Tanya in context, and I'll explain what it means. Tanya, besof perek gimel denida, mashbi'im oto tihi tzadik va'al tihi rasha. ואפילו כל העולם כולו אומרים לך צדיק אתה, היה בעיניך כרשע. So what does the word Tanya mean? Tanya means, it says in a Braita. In other words, the Rebbe is quoting the end of Perek Gimel of Masechet Nida, a quote from the Gemara. And so the quote from the Gemara begins with the word Tanya, because Tanya is the first word of the Sefer. Tanya means that the Alter Rebbe is quoting a Gemara that's quoting a Braita. It's very simple, right? But of course there are deeper meanings to the word Tanya. Okay. Tachlis, Perek Aleph begins with this quote from the Gemara. What does the Gemara teach us? That a baby, the soul, right, is associated, it's going to be born to this child. And before the birth, before the baby is born, before the soul descends into this body, into the world, it takes an oath, right? It has to take an oath. And every one of our souls, before it came into our body, before we were born, took an oath. What is this oath? Tihi tzaddik va'al tihi rasha. I will be a tzaddik and I won't be a rasha. Okay. And there's a second part to the oath. I will be a tzaddik and I won't be a rasha. And even if the whole world tells me, oh wow, you're such a tzaddik, and as soon as I'm born, I get a little onesie that says on it tzaddikah. Right? Even if the whole world tells me you're a tzaddik, my own eyes, I will see myself kirasha, as a rasha. That's this oath that I take. Okay? So I'm going to put on the board over here. Tihi tzaddik, I'd be a tzaddik, and I should be in my eyes kirasha. Every Jew has this mandate to see himself as a rasha. That we're taught that this oath that the soul takes, it's a shavua. In Hebrew, an oath is a shvu'ah. Shvu'ah is an oath. You hear in the word shvu'ah that this is, someone say something? In the roots of the word shvu'ah, which is an oath, you see sova. Sova. Sova is the masbia oti, right? V'achalta v'savata uveirachta. Right? When you eat and you're satisfied, you bless. That's the mitzvah deoraita, to bench berkat hamazon, to be satisfied. So what's the idea that we're taught in Chassidut? That mashbia oto, we take an oath, we're made to take an oath, and the oath is obviously what is the value of the oath? Right? What is the value of this commitment the soul makes to be righteous? It's maspia oto, right? It satiates us. The oath itself invests within us kochot to actually manifest the oath. It's a powerful thing about an oath, right? That the oath itself invests within us the power to manifest that which we are committing to. And, that's not in the Tanya directly. It's Chassidut on this oath. Okay? Back inside. So we take this oath, be a tzaddik, and don't be a rasha. And even when the whole world tells you that you're a tzaddik, be in your own eyes, see yourself kirasha. Okay. Now the Alter Rebbe says, interesting. So we've got these ideas, be a tzaddik, don't be a rasha, see yourself as a rasha, tzaddik, rasha, these ideas, these terms floating around, right? But we have another reference וצריך להבין, דהתנן אבות, פרק ב'. What about in פרקי אבות? The second chapter, what does it say over there? ואל תהי רשע בפני עצמך. Chazal tell us the very opposite. Over here we have, see yourself as a rasha. And in another place, the Mishnah tells us, don't see yourself as a rasha. Exactly the opposite. Al tihi rasha b'fnei atzmecha. Don't see yourself as a rasha. Which one is it? What does Chazal want from us? To see yourself as a rasha? Not to see ourselves as a rasha? Now that Rabbi continues around this idea of seeing ourselves as a rasha, well, v'gam im yeh be'einav kerasha yira levavo v'yeh atzuv. It seems pretty problematic to see ourselves as a rasha. Like if you all walk out today and you say, okay, we learned in Tanya today that we should see ourselves as a rasha, right? That should be our self-estimate, that should be our self-appraisal. I am a rasha. How many people are going to walk out feeling empowered and really good and, inspired to, inspired? And how many of us are going to walk out feeling pretty down and uninspired? So that's what Rabbi tells us. Nachon, yira levavo v'yeh atzuv. There's a big risk to seeing yourself as a rasha because you're very likely to be really down and sad. And that's a problem because, why is it a problem to be sad? Because who wants to be sad? Who wants to be sad? And v'lo yuchal lavod Hashem b'simcha v'tuv levav. We have another mandate to serve God with joy. With joy. And if you feel you're a rasha, you're not going to feel very joyful. You're going to feel pretty sad. How are you going to serve Hashem with joy? So what does it mean that we need to see ourselves as a rasha? Aren't we going to be sad? And on the other hand, it might be not a bad idea because if you bemet see yourself as a tzaddik, me, I'm a tzaddik. Oh my gosh, I'm totally a tzaddik. Yeah, I'm good to go. I'm perfect, right? That's not so helpful either because now I might be happy, but I'm going to be flippant. Yeah, I'm a tzaddik. Yeah, I'm a tzaddik, right? What happens tomorrow when I'm also like floating on my high horse? I'm probably not going to be I might not be so meticulous. I might not end up manifesting tzaddikness when I'm like, yeah, I'm good, I'm great, I'm awesome. The whole world tells me I'm a tzaddik, I'm awesome. It's very likely that I'm not going to be so conscientious. Okay, so what should we be thinking? We don't really know. We're supposed to see ourselves as a rasha, but it doesn't seem so productive. On the other hand, we don't want to get rid of this notion. We don't know. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe says, let's take this further. Because in effect, there isn't just tzaddik and rasha. Ach ha'inyan, we actually learn in the Gemara, Kihine matzinu b'Gemara, Hey chalukot. There are 5 divisions, 5 categories. So we put over here tzaddik, beinoni, and rasha. So now let's flesh it out into 5 categories. Tzaddik v'tovlo. Right, we have 2 kinds of tzaddik. Tzaddik v'tovlo. A tzaddik that it is good for him. Tzaddik v'ralo. Rasha, same thing, v'tovlo. Rasha v'ralo. And beinoni. And the Gemara explains who are these prototypes. Uperusho b'Gemara. The Gemara explains, tzaddik v'tovlo. Opa. Tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik gamur. He's an absolute tzaddik. Tzaddik v'ralo, tzaddik she eino gamur. Not absolutely a tzaddik. Rasha v'tovlo, rasha v'ralo, rasha gamur. Rasha v'tovlo. Am I reading correctly? Somebody help me out if I'm saying it wrong. Sheino gamur. Okay, it actually doesn't continue. Not Rabbi doesn't continue. But that's what it would look like. It's a parallel. Okay, in other words, the Gemara is associating this tovlo viralo, which literally is telling us about their life experience. Tovlo, right? They prosper. The tzaddik v'tovlo, There's this one category, this one type of Jew who is a tzaddik, who it's good for him. He prospers. You look at him and you see he's got lots going on for him. The tzaddik v'ralo, not so much. It's difficult. So tzaddik, but he's not prospering physically, materially. So the Gemara says, tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik v'ralo is actually, why? Because of an inner experience. Because the tzaddik v'tovlo, the tzaddik that's prospering, it's because he's a tzaddik gamur. On the outside, what's being reflected is really an inner experience. The tzaddik v'tovlo and the tzaddik v'ralo are not the same on the inside. The difference is on the outside, the fact that the one is prospering, the one is not, is because they're different on the inside. The one is a complete tzaddik, and the other is an incomplete tzaddik. Okay, so that's Rabbi's reflecting how really the conversation around the different types of Jews is really a conversation around what's going on in the inside. Even though when we just look at the Gemara, it seems like we're describing superficial conditions, tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik v'ralo. Okay, great, so we got these tzaddikim who they're doing really well, and these tzaddikim who they're not doing so well. Really, the Gemara is honing us in on an inner condition that varies. So, while they both seem like tzaddikim, just this one is doing well and this one isn't doing well, they're not the same on the inside. There are different options. The one option is the tzaddik who's complete tzaddik on the inside. And the other is a tzaddik who's not a complete tzaddik in the inside. So we actually have two categories in terms of the inner experience. Not just what we observe from the outside, but on the inside. And now the Alter Rebbe brings us another quote from the Raya Mehemna, which is a part of the Zohar, that follows, that also reflects the similar descriptions, which again, what is the point? That we're noticing, that we're observing that there's different experiences on the inside. These categories are reflecting not just what meets the eye, but the internal experience, the degree of perfection/imperfection on the inside. Are there defects on the inside or not? So the Alter Rebbe brings us the Zohar. Let's read inside. U'b'raya mehemna parashat mishpatim piresh tzaddik v'ralo shehara shebo kafuf latov. The tzaddik v'ralo, the tzaddik who's not prospering on the outside, this is actually describing an inner experience. Shehara shebo kafuf latov. He has some ra, he has some evil on the inside. He's not a complete tzaddik, he's an incomplete tzaddik. He has some evil on the inside, but the ra lo, his evil on the inside is low. He has mastery over it. It's his. It's kafuf. His ra is in submission to him. Okay, we're going to explore these categories more, but what we want to appreciate is, again, that the categories are really describing the inner world of the Jew, and there are options. So what we're saying is that it's not necessarily what's going to. We're not going to necessarily be able to pick this up with our eyes. What's going on in the inside of an individual? Okay, moving on. So we haven't yet said Beinani. We haven't yet mentioned the Beinani. Right? We've mentioned the tzaddik and the rasha. Now we're going to bring in the Beinani. U'begemara sof perek tet brachot. So in another place in the Gemara, in brachot, what does it say over there? Tzaddikim, it's going to mention tzaddikim, rishaim, and beinonim. Also with a description, right? Who is a tzaddik? Who is a rasha? And who is a beinoni? So the Gemara over there in Masechet Brachot tells us, tzaddikim, yetzer tov shoftan. The tzaddik is somebody who his yetzer tov is ruling, is judging. Right? He's guided, he's judged, he's ruled, he's guided by his good impulse. The Rishaim, who's guiding the ship of the Rasha? Yetzer hara shoftan, right? His inner judge, his guide, right? His impulse that's guiding is the Yetzer hara. And what about the Beinoni? Zeh v'zeh shoftan. The Beinoni the intermediate man, our in-betweener, Sefer Shel Beinonim, are judged by both the good and the evil nature. Both the good, guided by both good and bad impulses. But what does that tell us? It's natural. Inside of our body, we have both. Can. Yafa, yafa. Beautiful, nachon. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So what does that tell us? Does that tell us enough? Do we know now who the Beinoni is by the fact that he has two impulses? No, we don't know enough about the Beinoni. So we have a quote that somebody in the Gemara, this is great, Tanya, his name is Rabba, and he actually testifies about himself that he's a Beinoni. Amar Rabba, Rabba says, Kigon ana Beinoni, I'm a great example of a Beinoni, he says. Abaye says to him, Rabba, what in the world are you doing? What do you mean you're saying about yourself that you're a Beinoni? If you say about yourself that you're a Beinoni, Lo shavik mar chaye lechol birya v'chule. You're not leaving any life for anyone. Okay, so what just happened? What is this conversation between Rabba and Abaye? Abaye says, this is not okay, Rabba. You can't call yourself a Beinoni. Why? Because if you're a Beinoni and you are so great, we're going to see in a second, the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us how great Rabba is. And if you're a Beinoni, that means that everyone that's not on your level is, what are you leaving them? What category are you leaving them? Rasha, right? There's tzaddik, Beinoni, Rasha. So if you're calling yourself a Beinoni and you're so great, that means that you're leaving the status of Rasha for everyone else that's not on your level, which means that you're not leaving them life. That's the way that Abaye expresses it, because we know, Chazal tell us about a Rasha, that tzaddik, even after his lifetime, he's still called alive. But the Rasha, even during his lifetime, we've seen this together, right? He's called dead. So what are you doing, Rabba? Why are you calling yourself a Beinoni? Well, our question is going to be not only why are you taking away life from everyone else by leaving them only category of Rasha, so to speak, but we're going to say, what in the world is a Beinoni? Because you are so great, and you're calling yourself a Beinoni, well, that must mean that a Beinoni isn't what we thought it was. That when the Gemara told us Beinoni zeh v'zeh shoftan, that the Beinoni has both impulses that are his internal judges, that must not mean that he's half the time indulging this impulse and half the time indulging this impulse. In other words, he's like a 50-50 kind of Jew, an in-betweener who's average, who's 50-50. That must not be what the Beinoni is, because then Rabba would never either mistakenly call himself a Beinoni, or because of the virtue of humility, call himself a Beinoni because he's preposterous. Understand? If a Beinoni is a half-half kind of Jew, he's governed by this impulse and by this impulse. Then Rabba could never call himself a Beinoni, either by mistake, because what kind of a mistake? Who can make such a gross mistake, right? And we're going to see in a second how great Rabba is. He can't make such a mistake because it's too extreme. This half-half kind of notion, right, of a Jew, and what Rabba was. And also, we can't say that he's just being humble because, humility can only cover so much, so much ground. Understand what I'm saying? No one's going to say, no person, I would never, in my humility, say that, yeah, I steal sometimes because I want to, show that I'm humble. I would never say that, because stealing is, really big deal, If I want to show that I'm humble, I might say, I might be like, yeah, I get upset at my kids sometimes, because that's, reasonable. But the Beinoni, but Rava, to call himself a Beinoni, we're going to see, is not it doesn't seem to be very reasonable. But again, we don't know yet why, so we have to go deeper into the learning to see, be'emet, what could a Beinoni possibly be. Okay. Ulahavin kol zeh be'er hetev. The Alter Rebbe says that, yes, I'm not surprised if you're feeling very confused right now, right? We started out with this oath that the soul has to take, be a tzaddik, don't be a rasha. But even if the world tells you you're a tzaddik, the whole world still be in your eyes as a rasha. But hold on a second. Be in your eyes as a rasha. Elsewhere it tells me, don't ever think that you're a rasha. Yes, I'm a Rasha in my own eyes. No, I'm not a Rasha in my own eyes. Is it a good idea to be a Rasha in your own eyes? Can I serve God with joy if I think of myself as a Rasha, right? But on the other hand, I can't think that I'm a tzaddik because then I might be flippant. I have to have some sense of like holding myself together. Tzaddik, Rasha, who is a tzaddik? And what is a Rasha? What do these terms even mean that we're committing to and we're afraid of? Right? What do they even mean? So we have 5 categories. And they seem at first to be describing external conditions, whether or not the person is prospering. But we look a little bit deeper and we see that no, these categories are really describing inner experiences. Well, what sort of how many options do we have for inner experiences, right? What could it look like inside that we have 5 different categories? And even if we realize that tzaddik can either be a complete tzaddik or an incomplete tzaddik, what is the Beinoni? So he's got these 2 impulses. What does that mean that he has 2 impulses? And Rabbah calls himself a Beinoni. But Rabbah could possibly be a Beinoni? Meaning he's leaving Rasha status for everyone else? Is that really what Rabbah means? Okay, so now the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us, let's give something, and before we look at that piece more, the Alter Rebbe brings up the idea of determination, predetermination on the board. Right, we have to explain all of this well because be'emet we're confused. And let's just put one more question on the board. So we're really confused. The idea of predetermination. Eov makes a statement, it's quoted in Baba Batra, Perak Aleph, Ribono shel olam. Eov says, Hashem, barata tzaddikim, barata reshaim. You've created tzaddikim, you've created reshaim. Is it true that Hashem creates us as tzaddikim and as reshaim with this predeterminism? Right? You are created and your destiny is to be a tzaddik and your destiny is to be a rasha. We have another reference in the Gemara, V'hat tzaddik v'rasha lo ka'amar. The reference in detail, just quickly, is that it says there's an angel that like collects the seed or brings the seed to Hashem and says, Hashem, what is this baby? What is this fetus going to be? Is it going to be wise or foolish? And there's a few other like this or that. And the Gemara points out that the angel doesn't say he's going to be righteous or wicked. Why not? Because it's not predetermined. That's in our control to be righteous or wicked. So why does Eov say, you created tzaddikim and you created rashaim? We must not really know what a tzaddik is and what a rasha is, which is the whole conversation that we don't. Okay, carrying on. Ultimately, what we want to understand in this whole, back and forth, this whole pilpul is, what is the nature of the Beinoni? What is the Beinoni? What is his mahut? What is the notion of the Beinoni? The first thing that we need to rule out to be able to understand what is our true potential is that the Beinoni is certainly not a half-half kind of guy. What's our proof that it's certainly not a half-half kind of guy? Because if it is a half-half, the Beinoni sometimes sins and sometimes doesn't, check. It's like its chart is half-half, like my kids' charts, right? And they get these beautiful charts for the Chof Shinon, right? All these things they can do correct every day and check. It's like, okay, check. Truth is, we usually lose them. No, but Kilo, is that like the Beinoni checks, some half checks, half not checks? Yeah, Chof Shinon. Yeah, it's like a beautiful, beautiful, perfect paper of all the lovely ways to be a tzaddik, like perfection. But then you have to check the boxes. You've had this, right? So saying the Beinoni is half-half, for sure it's not that. So everybody get that out of your head. If you thought, right? When we said that we're studying Sefer Shel Beinoni, Beinoni is the again, I always forget the in-betweener. But that means that he's half righteous, half wicked. Sometimes, yes, he does the right thing, and sometimes he does the wrong thing. It cannot be that that's the Beinoni. Again, what's our proof? Because if that was a Beinoni, then there's no way to explain how Rabbah could make this mistake and call himself a Beinoni. There's no way that he could have thought that he was a half-half kind of guy. Why not? Because what do we know about Rabbah? So specifically, delo pasik pume mikirsa. His mouth never ceased studying the Torah. Al she'afilu malach hamavet lo haya yachol lishlot bo. We're told about him, and again this is from the Gemara, Masechet Bava Metzia, that the angel of death had no dominion over him, couldn't take him. He wasn't able to overpower him because his learning was so high and so constant that the angel of death had no gisha. We can't say that he made this mistake and thought that he had half sins. So Beinani must mean something else. Va'od. And another reason, and now we're going to actually give, I think, six quick proofs from the Gemara that all point in the same direction, that the Beinani is not a half-half person, and actually is much more than not only not half-half. Okay, so what are the proofs? Okay, va'od, shaharei. Listen to this. Shaharei b'sha'a she'oseh avonot nikra rasha gamor. The Gemara tells us that when a person is, God forbid, committing a sin, so again, we're throwing away the old definition of the Beinani. Beinani is half-half, right? So he's doing sin sometimes. No, that can't be a Beinani, because when a person is, God forbid, committing a sin, until he repents, meaning while he's still in the sin, so we just said something really, really meaningful, that when he repents, his status changes. A person can repent in 1 minute. Right? But when a person is, God forbid, committing a sin, he is Rasha Gamor. He's a Rasha. That is his status. And then the Alter Rebbe actually puts it right here in the brackets. It's amazing. The Alter Rebbe needs to tell us that, even though it's not one of our proofs, but it's in parentheses if we're mentioning that a Jew who is committing, God forbid, a sin, becomes a Rasha, an absolute Rasha in that moment, and it's necessary to right away follow with the fact that if he has the opportunity to repent and become tzaddik gamur. Right? It's very dynamic. The opportunity as a Jew is very dynamic. Okay, moving on. So when a person, God forbid, is committing an aveira, they're a rasha. Not Rebbe takes it one step further. But what about rabbinic? What about a person violating rabbanan, edicts of the rabbis? Right. So we've already established if you violate the Torah and Doraita, sin. Rasha. But what about a violation of the rabbanim? Maybe that's the Beinani. He doesn't do anything against the Torah, but he does stuff against the rabbis. No, because even a sin against the rabbis, mikra rasha. As we have in these various places in Chazal, in the Gemara, also called the rasha. Okay, fine. So the Beinani certainly can't be somebody who's doing a Doraita. Certainly can't be somebody who's doing a Derabanan. But maybe his sin, that happens, now and then, is that he doesn't stop other people from sinning when he has the opportunity. And that's his weakness. No. If a person has the opportunity to stop somebody else from sinning and they don't, the Gemara says, Rasha. And so that, by means of a kal vachomer, tells us maybe the Beinani, right? He's sin, because again he's intermediary, right? So he's half-half. Maybe his half-half is that he's not doing, his weakness is he's not doing some of the positive commandments. That doesn't make him a rasha, right? He's a Beinani. No, also makes him a rasha. As the Gemara speaks very, very harshly about a person who has the opportunity to fulfill a positive mitzvah. Which one? Learning Torah, and they don't. Rasha. Upshita de mikre rasha tfei me'over isur d'Rabbanan. Ve'im kein al korchecha habeinuni ein bo afilu avon bitul Torah. So we must conclude that the Beinoni is somebody who doesn't even have the Avera of Bitul Torah, which is not an easy it's not easy. I don't know how to say it, right? Bitul Torah is very difficult. Mitzvah of Talmud Torah for a man specifically is very difficult because it's shayach all the time. And he's not in Bitul Torah. Okay, this is why. So now we've answered one question that we asked so far today. How could Rabbi make a mistake and call himself a Beinoni? Well, because the Beinoni is pretty hot stuff. Beinoni has nothing. Okay, so we've acknowledged that the Beinoni is somebody who is perfect. Who is perfect. He doesn't have any sins. What have we not answered? We don't know why, before we're born, we make this oath to be a tzaddik and not to be a rasha, but to see ourselves as a rasha. We haven't answered that. We're going to answer it in chapter 14, I think, 13, 14, in a while. Right? Why is that? Why is that the oath which we have to fulfill? Right? To see ourselves as a rasha. And what did I write down the 3 questions? Ken. And what's the real difference between a tzaddik and a Beinoni and a rasha? What's the real difference? Where do the differences actually lie? Well, we have acknowledged what logic led Rabbah to make this mistake. Okay, so we have now what's called a Haggah, which the Alter Rebbe is kind of like Kuntres Achron in a sense. The Alter Rebbe is responding to a question you might have if we're more learned. And they're usually pretty cryptic. So let's look inside. ומה שכתוב בזוהר חלק ג' דף ר' כל שמועטין עוונותיו וכולי, היא שאלת רב המנונה לאליהו. אבל לפי תשובת אליהו שם פירוש צדיק ורע לו הוא כמו שכתוב בראיה מהמנה פרשה משפטים דלאל ושבעים פנים לתורה. Basically, the Alter Rebbe brings us this piece of Zohar, in case we're familiar with it, and I mean, that's not just in case we're familiar, also because it's a part of the learning here, where it seems, it's an interesting piece because it's somewhat of a misunderstanding, but the misunderstanding still has to be understood. Meaning, it seems Rabbi Hamnuna is presenting an option, but then it gets canceled out. But the fact that he can present this option means that it seems like it has some sort of a validity, even though it gets canceled in the discussion itself. But even the fact that it appears on the page is relevant in our learning here, where the Zohar, where Rabbi Hamnuna offers that the righteous man who suffers might be somebody who does have some sins. It might be somebody who does have some sins, but he isn't. And Rabbi Hamnuna says, Eliyahu comes and says, no, it's not. The tzaddik v'ralo does not have any sins, right? The ralo, the suffering on the outside is not because he has sins. It's because there is something imperfect on the inside, right? And that's why they're suffering on the outside, because there's something imperfect on the inside. But it's not actually sins. It's something else. It's some other inner experience. It's some other defect, so to speak, but it's not sin. Okay. So again, Rabbi Hamnuna makes this suggestion, and then it gets negated, right? It gets negated. Eliyahu says, no. The tzaddik v'ralo does not have any sins. Why does he even propose? So you might be asking, and Alter Rebbe is saying, we might be wondering how Rabbi Hamnuna can even propose that the tzaddik v'ralo does have sins when we clearly determine that the tzaddik v'ralo does not have any sins. Even the Beinoni doesn't have sin. Right? How could Rabbi Hamnuna even propose that he might? Because of a principle which is called shivim panim laTorah. There are 70 facets to the Torah. And Rabbi Hamnuna proposes, right? He thinks that maybe one of the facets includes this notion that the tzaddik v'ralo has some sort of sinfulness, but he doesn't. Okay? But meaning it's only that in potential. The idea that the tzaddik v'ra'lo has some sort of sinfulness is only possibly a facet of the Torah, but it's not, because Eliyahu Navi says no. It's not. That's not the tzaddik v'ra'lo. Okay? Anyhow, it's a little bit complicated, this piece in the brackets in the end, but it brings us back to where we were, which is where? Where are we in conclusion? So we said chapter 1 is this question, ani, like who am I? What am I? Right? Sefer Beinanim. So the Alter Rebbe is speaking to us, all of us in potential Beinanim. But what does it mean to be in potential Beinani? Where are we aspiring to? What be'emet is our potential? Right? Because the average person, meaning the average one of us, probably doesn't feel like that their potential is perfection. Whatever that even means. I don't like that word. But like wholesomeness. Okay? It's much more watered down, right? Yeah, we can use that word. It's wholesome, to be wholesome, right? The average person probably doesn't feel like they can consistently make the right choices every time. Is that something that we can even aspire for, right? And so Alter Rebbe says, well, he hasn't told us yes yet, right? What we're opening chapter 1 with is a learning around who be'emet are we? What is our potential? Right? So we're Jews. Right? We're Jews. Great. There's a poster. Has anybody seen it in Achlaut? It's been up there forever, right? There's ein chilonim, ein datiim, yesh rak Yehudim kedushim. Right? There's no chiloni. There's no secular. There's no religious. There's only holy Jews. What does it mean to be a holy Jew? So the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us that all of creation is godly. This is familiar to how we ended in Kontrasach. And all of creation is godly. It's godly, right? There's godliness in everything. The Jew and our soul is a piece of God, right? We are unique. Our soul is unique. We are a piece of God, not just godliness, but a piece of God. And so to be the Jew that we can be, right? It's like, well, again, who am I? Where do I fit in? What are the possibilities? Let's learn. Let's learn about it. Right? So there's tzaddik, there's rasha, there's also beinani. What makes one different to another? Right? What is the determining factor? What are we made up of? And what is our potential? And so as a Sefer Shel Beinani, we're realizing that the Beinani is not what we thought it was. It's not this person who, is in between the tzaddik and the rasha, and therefore, getting it right some of the time, sometimes, getting it right some of the times and getting it wrong some of the times. The Beinani is actually such a high level that Rabbi could call himself a Beinani. So what is it? So who are we, right? What? Questions, comments?
Can you give an example of a tzaddik v'ra'lo?
We can't yet because we haven't explained it properly. That's a great question, to show that we really haven't done justice to any of the categories. Yeah. We've basically shown that we need to understand them. Alter says, "Leva'er hetev." We need to understand, and that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. And in understanding them, we're going to learn who we are and what our potential is, and how to manifest our potential. We have no idea what a tzaddik v'ra'lo is. Perfect, imperfect. And why do we need two terms? Why do we need this perfect tzaddik and tzaddik that is good for him? They must tell us different things. What does each one tell me? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Why would
that magazine? Is it here? To make yourself a melech, where your husband's feature? Is it here?
Yeah, I think I brought it back home, but I have it.
why would this speak to Pasha?
When you say this, what do you mean?
Understanding about the 5 categories of who am I?
Ask it even deeper. Yeah.